Well, hello again, and welcome to yet another episode of Sermon B-Sides. My name is Rusten. I'm one of the pastors here at Coram Deo Church, and I'm here with Pastor Jon. Merry Christmas!
Frohe Weihnachten.
Is that how you say it in German?
That's a really bad butchering of it, but yes, that's my attempt to say
Feliz
it.
Navidad!
Yeah. Zorianak. That would be Basque. Well, there's probably another way to say that. But
Something Noel.
anyways, yeah. Petit Noel.
Petit Noel, little Noel, I don't know.
That's Father. Anyway,
Papa
Merry
Noel.
Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
I'm pretty sure we will be running some Advent B-Sides after Christmas.
Yeah.
But I think that this is the one that will be right before Christmas.
This will come out right before. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we'll have this
So we'll
one
have two
out.
after Christmas because we've got
Yeah.
the your sermon
Yep.
from last Sunday.
Angels
and
we
then-
have heard now,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So super Merry Christmas as you get super close.
It's really when do these go out? Thursday?
I think the B-sides now go out on Fridays. So
This would be out on Christmas Eve.
yeah, Christmas Eve, I think.
Yeah.
So
Christmas morning, we know the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna wake up and you're like, I gotta check out B-sides before we open presents.
I know, I'm thinking like this may be the least listened to episode. Or people will like listen, I'm imagining, come on around, children, listen to the B-sides
Yeah.
radio show. No,
Yeah,
probably not.
I know what I'll be doing on Christmas
Yes.
morning.
Opening presents and
I'm
making
gonna read
food.
the prayer in the Advent.
Oh, yes, the
devotional.
Advent devotional prayer.
Yeah.
If you don't know, we make our church yearly makes an Advent devotional.
Yes.
Complete with liturgical prayers, and it's one of my favorite things we produce and hand out.
Yes.
It's always again, we talked about this in the last one. Like Christmas is about extravagance.
Yep.
It's about very little restraint.
Yep.
For good reason,
Over the
because
top.
God is not held any restraint in the giving of His Son. That's how I
Yeah.
like to think about it.
Yeah.
But we don't make devotionals every year, every time of the year.
Not all the time, but
Usually
for Christmas.
Easter and Christmas, right?
Yeah. And one of the cool things is that the devotionals are all written by elders,
Mm-hmm.
and that includes elders that are like full-time staff pastors
Yep.
like you and me,
Yep.
and elders who are lay elders
Yep.
who have full-time jobs outside of the church but serve in overseeing.
Yeah.
So guys like Derek and Aaron, and it gives them, you get to hear their voice.
Yeah.
So Aaron writes our prayers. He is such a priestly
Yeah.
guy, wonderful guy, and so that's kind of become like a norm. Like Aaron write the prayer. So he did a prayer for Thanksgiving, and he's got a prayer for Christmas morning, and I look forward to reading those.
Yeah.
The
me
family.
too.
So
Awesome.
anywho,
Well, we are talking about O come, Emmanuel, which is
Yes.
funny because I think we ended our last episode really emphasizing Emmanuel.
Emmanuel, God
but
with us.
this episode will probably emphasize more the O come part,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Because you when you preached on, you didn't preach on this carol. You preached on Isaiah 7:14 and as well as I think a Matthew 1:18 to. Actually,
23.
the last part we read at the end of the last episode.
Yep.
Those two passages emphasize the kind of finally he's come.
Yeah.
Which means finally assumes there's been a lot of waiting, and so
Yeah.
you emphasized a lot the kind of in terms of our history.
Yep.
The waiting aspect of
Yep.
this, even as I just say that, I think, wow, God is writing a story because stories take time,
Mm-hmm.
and why is there all this buildup? Why is there all this time involved? Why not just put it all on a platter at the very beginning?
Yeah.
Right? God
Yeah.
doesn't work that way,
He doesn't.
and because he's interested in something.
Yeah.
I think he's interested in a story that ultimately glorifies his son, right? But it's interesting when you think about, Scripture gives us not just truths; it gives us an entire understanding of history.
Right.
That the pagans back around the time of the first century. Most of everybody outside of Christianity had mostly a cyclical understanding of time. Time and the world wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
It was cyclical, destruction, death, out of that birth comes life,
Yeah.
and then fruit, and then destruction, death, and war, and like, so their understanding of reality and history and everything, nothing had a end in mind, a telos.
A telos, yeah.
And even the idea of waiting assumes a telos.
Something, you're waiting for something.
Something.
Yeah.
And there's a purpose behind that waiting. And I think it's interesting. Like, I think there's a guy, I read this guy, really bizarre.
I told you read all sorts of things.
Swedish, it's like this Swedish guy. Okay. His name is Eugen Rosenstock Hussey. Okay. And of course I read him because like Peter Leithart mentioned him once. So of course he's like obscure.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
Eugen, his name looks like Eugene, but it's Eugen Rosenstock Hussey. And he makes this defense in this book called The Christian Future that even the idea of future
Oh, yeah.
is a Christian doctrine.
Yes.
There's no such thing as future
Right.
without the Christian doctrines.
Right.
And that's been hijacked.
Yep.
Many heresies have grown out of this future because everybody believes now in the future because the gospel has invaded our world, but they want a piece of it.
Yeah.
They want to take it in their direction. Right?
What's really interesting is, I think maybe we've talked about this before on B-Sides. Michael Poyani, who was a
Personal knowledge, super smart.
Yeah, super smart and like everything. Like this guy was like brilliant.
Chemist.
Yeah, mathematics.
Renowned chemist.
Crazy. But he, and I think it might have been the book Personal Knowledge. I read it years ago. But he talked about how communism is a counterfeit that is only possible because of the gospel.
Yes, yes.
Because the gospel tells us there is a God who made this world, who has a purpose for this world, and through his son, he is accomplishing and fulfilling that purpose, which is the restoration of all things,
Yes.
right? And so without that story, all you have is you live and you die.
Yeah. Yeah. Tragedy.
Right? You just have tragedy. So once you have this story of a God who's rescuing and is going to redo creation, make things new, there's going to be righteousness and justice, and it sets up the opportunity for a counterfeit.
Yes.
And so he's arguing that communism and socialism and all, lots of political ideologies are counterfeits of that, but they don't exist unless you have this, like you're saying, the notion of a future.
Yeah. No one tried to counterfeit a dollar before a dollar existed.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
it's
Well
because
said.
there's something that ends up being, you mimic it or you take it or you take out the parts you modify it because you take out the parts you don't want.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So it's interesting is that, if you read the philosophies before Christ, a lot of them just don't have a notion of utopia or anything.
Right.
Whereas now everything is about the future and utopia. Even Darwinism understands this notion of time as being this perfecting thing,
and
right?
Progress and
progress
favored species and
you have
becoming something.
And you have Hegel, who's like dialectic of like, this is how we move into the future. There's some truth that we come upon, and then there's something that collides with it, and then out of that smash, we get
thesis,
a new
antithesis,
synthesis. Exactly. And his idea was that we would come into the fullness of truth and harmony of being, and it would be like the future invading now through this, like every new synthesis attacks a new synthesis, and we would finally get to like arrive at this perfect utopia in both knowledge and practice.
Yeah.
And so you would he's ultimately he is ultimately utopian.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And the Christian story is also ultimately utopian in terms of it ends with the marriage feast where there is joy and laughter and goodness and everything, every tear is wiped from the eyes.
Yep.
But if you have a utopia story without God who makes it right, you make terror of men.
Yeah.
Men become terrors.
Yes, if you either have a utopian vision in which the Son of God bleeds, or you have a utopian vision in which all of mankind is bleeding.
Yes.
Someone's dying to purchase this
Yes.
utopia.
Somebody is. Yes.
Somebody's dying.
Yes.
That's why you have the gulags. That's why you have,
Yes.
you just look at the communist regimes of the 20th century,
Yeah.
and it was like, why did those people have to die? Because they were hindering progress towards the utopian vision.
Yeah. And we have a soft utopianism in the U.S. that's becoming harder.
It's becoming less soft.
But the soft utopianism, I'd say, is like the Deweyan pragmatism. So like I listened to an audiobook of R.C. Sproul's Ideas Have Consequences recently. So all these like philosophers are like fresh in my mind. But one of the things he says, great story. He takes his kid to this school, this public school or whatever, and there was like this I think maybe it was a private school, but not a Christian school. It's a private, I don't know, but he's sitting in this like PTA thing, right? And the headmaster of the school or the principal is giving it was a very like specific, like everything was purposeful in the school. And it's like for the first 17 minutes of the day, the kids will do puzzles that specifically aim at strengthening motor skills in the left hand, which is often neglected. And everything, the whole day is like regimented minute by minute, like all these specific things. And R.C. Sproul's like, wow, this is really intense. But then he asks the question, so you've made it really clear that you are incredibly purposeful with all the time. But I have to ask, what is the purpose for which you are forming these kids? Like, what is the goal? What are you hoping to form them into? And then he said that the teacher or the headmaster got kind of like red face, like, well, I've never had anybody ask me that question, and honestly, I don't know. And R.C. said, you know what, I really appreciate your purposefulness, but that answer to that question terrifies me. Like, you don't, like, the emphasis on just building and making and doing and versus having any goal in mind. Now, we tend to operate with a goal in mind, but we kind of like deify the goal, meaning we turn it into something we don't even like. It's transcendent. We don't really know what it is. Progress talks about moving forward.
Towards
what?
Yeah.
We don't know. It's the divine. It's like we can't touch it. It's transcendent.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That is concerning, because if you don't know what it is, then and you're the one driving it, you don't know if you're driving off a cliff. Yeah. Which is what I think we're doing.
We're doing right now. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but this idea of like the future, waiting, purpose, it's an eschatological. There's an eschatological end times mindset with this. Yep. You know, the Old Testament had an eschatology. They were looking forward to something that would happen. Yep. And it happened a lot. It happened in the New Testament, a good chunk of it, right? Yes. The Son came.
Son comes.
The sometimes you'll get some theologians that talk about like the already not yet, and I think the already is like there's a looking forward that happened in the Old Testament that already has come in Christ, and there's a not yet after Christ's coming that is not yet come to fruition
for us.
For us, yes.
Yeah. So waiting. So I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay. Yeah.
Waiting. Okay. So waiting is actually something that our Christmas celebrations are full of.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You don't put a Christmas tree up on Christmas Eve.
No.
Right. When did your tree go up?
It's been up. I think it's been a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks.
Okay. So like you got your
like we aimed at like we were gonna do it like right after Thanksgiving. That's usually when we try. But we had like a bunch of sick kids.
That's what we had too.
So we ended up doing it like the Saturday after Thanksgiving or something like that.
Yeah, that's what we did as well. So it's like you got all these things that you're waiting in this season. Yeah. Unlike any other season. So here's the question. What are some of the things that mark the way in your household? Like the waiting.
The waiting.
You know? Like because you got this like liturgical season where there's certain things that you do along the way. What are some of those things?
Some of those things are
traditions.
Traditions. Some of those things are, presents in themselves are you're hiding something, right? It's intentionally hidden. And it's intentionally hidden in view for a chunk of time.
That's really cool.
Waiting for you to open it.
Yep.
And there's a surprise that you don't know what it is. But you know what it is, but you don't know what it is.
Yeah. Yep.
You know it, and you know it's come, but you
Yep.
don't know what it means.
Yep.
So there's a lot of interesting Christian, I don't know, like shaped stuff there, right?
Yeah.
So it's presents are one thing.
What's the first like Christmas thing you guys do?
The first Christmas thing we probably do is get the tree.
You get the tree.
Yeah, get the tree, decorate it. We watch Christmas movies, which are like, these are all things that are like, it's funny because like when you watch a Christmas movie, you're watching Christmas happen before it happens.
Yes.
You're watching a story of this thing that you're waiting to do happen. And you're watching all those happen up until the point. We have like a little advent calendars too where you track the day and there's little chocolates that come out like the kids get these chocolate advent calendars. They love them and we get those every year. There's little activities we do, like we did some gingerbread houses. I don't know how those teach waiting because the kids don't get to eat them at the end because they're gross.
Yeah. But it's a sign.
It's a sign. I mean,
Like
it's all
along the way.
What it does is it marks this time as Christmas time.
Yeah.
And Christmas Day marks that's the time we're living in the tail of that time. So yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are the big traditions in our house are, get the tree, decorate the tree, Christmas movies. I kind of like advent calendars. I was actually talking to Brenna. I was like, we need a couple more like things that the kids can look forward to. Their tradition wise, we haven't traveled during Christmas generally. I'd love to go to Leavenworth. You get to go to Leavenworth. That's like the best.
Awesome.
Like that'd be awesome to do like a plan a day trip every Christmas season to go up and see the lights and stuff, or plan an overnight night or something like that.
I got a place for you guys to stay.
Okay, all right.
The best rate in town.
All right, cool. Right on. So, how about you?
Yeah, we have a ton.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like waiting is something that we do almost like throughout the whole year. So it's not uncommon for us to be in April, like driving as a family somewhere, whatever. And I'll literally go May, June, July, August, September, October, November. 7 months till the Christmas lights go back up outside. Like it just happens throughout the year. So it's like, it's kind of always like, it feels like every year is like just waiting for Christmas. And then we have a ton of traditions. We have like the pre-Christmas tradition of we watch all of the Harry Potter movies on Sunday nights leading up to Christmas, so that the Sunday before Thanksgiving, we finish the Harry Potter series, and the Sunday after Thanksgiving, we watch Christmas movies. So we do a lot of we have a lot of lights in our house, and so we start prepping lights in like October and put them up in November. And there's all these little things that are like, okay, we're getting closer.
There's an odd joy with lights going up on stuff.
Yes,
I love it.
Me too.
I want to get better at it because last year. 2 years ago, I had bought these new lights, but like you gotta really plan on maintaining those things because like I had so many issues last year that I didn't end up doing a whole section on my roof because of that. And so this year it's like you have to plan to do a lot of that in advance.
Yeah,
you have to plan on waiting.
Pro tip, okay?
Yeah,
December 27th.
Yeah,
go to Walmart.
Oh, and buy all the lights.
I bought 40 boxes of new lights.
Nice.
Last year for $37.
Nice.
There's like thousands of lights, and it was like, because my wife was like, "Hey, hon, they're on sale. You should go look at them." So I went, and I got a shopping cart and just keep adding and adding.
Yeah.
Anyways, waiting.
Yeah.
We're waiting throughout the season. Our families are waiting. These traditions are all these steps along the path getting us to the climax and the celebration. Yeah. But our waiting is much shorter. Than the waiting of the saints that came before, right? And that was one of the things in the sermon I was trying to point out. It's like, man, Abraham, there's like 2,000 years of history or so between Abraham and Christ. And Abraham was given a promise of the nations being blessed through his seed. Yeah. Right? And it's like, but that wasn't a promise that God fulfilled quickly.
No. I mean, even just like, think about like from Abraham to the beginning of the slavery of the Jews in Egypt is 400 years.
Yeah.
400 years from Abraham to the beginning of the slavery.
Yep.
Not the end of it.
The beginning.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You have basically, then you have the life of Moses from being a baby up until he's grown up. That's the extra time. That's the time of slavery. But you know what? Time is such an interesting thing. Because like when I think about time in some ways, I'm like, whoa, that's forever long. Then when I think about it in other ways, I'm like, wow, that's really not that long. Like when you think about the fact that, it only takes 20 100-year-olds in a line to get from you to Jesus.
Yeah.
20 100-year-olds.
Yeah.
That's not very...
No. When you think of it that way.
Only 20 100-year-old guys.
Yeah.
Stack them up, and you are at Jesus.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah.
That's...
I've never thought of it that way.
It makes you think about time differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you start to realize, wow, that's not very much. It feels like not very much time.
Yeah.
There's only 400-year-old guys between Abraham and Egypt.
Yeah.
That seems a lot shorter.
Huh.
For if they lived to 100, that's only 4 grandpas.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's wild. So that the waiting is a long time, but at the same time, like, there's God was not slow in delivering his promises, and has things have come about in a way that, like, I think that people like to use time to say, well, the distance between times can often, it seems like, become an opportunity for doubt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh, like it's so impossible for these things to be connected. They're so far apart. But on the flip side, the same people who doubt the like, for instance, just doubt the coming of Christ as being connected to, like, this Old Testament story. The same people who doubt that love to use time as this magical thing that makes people just appear out of nothing. Exactly.
It's like the pixie dust.
So it's like time is, but time is. Time is interesting in all kinds of ways. What is time exactly? It's something that's in God's hands. We tie it to material things like the sun and stuff, but
Yeah.
there's time existed before the sun did.
And time never unfolds the way that you want it.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
like it's either things are going, like you're having kids and like it's going so fast, right? But if you're sick, it's like it's going so slow.
Yeah.
God, would you heal? So yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
Lots of waiting. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say I love that, but what I love about the Christmas traditions, and here's another one I do. It's like as a kid I used to love these, and my kids do them too. It's like you create the chains.
Oh yeah.
I used to have one on my bed. It was like
Yeah.
I'd take one down every day. Take one of the paper chains,
Yeah.
And you just take one down, and then you get down to like 3 loops left. It's like 3 days. And like every day, the kids are like, so how many more sleeps until Christmas?
How many more sleeps?
Exactly.
That's awesome.
So marking, but there's I love that because it's a playful way to remember that we are awaiting people. We're waiting for God to act. It's not I was telling you this earlier, it's not a sit on your hands waiting.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
There's a lot of stuff that happens between Abraham and Jesus coming. Stuff that required obedience.
Right.
Stuff that required hard work and action.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of and thinking long term in terms of generations. But it was still waiting.
It was waiting.
It was still waiting on God to fulfill his promise, right?
Yeah, and at the arrival, right, in the incarnation, and this is what I was talking about in the sermon, that you have the end of one kind of waiting, but you have the beginning of a new kind of waiting, right? So, so you've got the people of God waiting for Emmanuel, God, to be with us. We're waiting for the Lamb of God who's going to not just, be a type or a shadow of, the blood cleansing us from unrighteousness, but an actual atonement of sin. Like you're waiting for the fulfillment of the law. You're waiting for all these things. So when Christ comes and he fulfills those things, he really does fulfill them, and it marks the end of a particular kind of waiting.
Yeah.
But
And an age.
in an age, right?
Yeah.
That's come to an end. But now we're living on the flip side of the manger and the cross and the empty tomb, but we're still waiting. We are still looking forward to, anticipating something that is not yet here.
We look forward, anticipating something that's not yet here, and just like the Old Testament looked forward, but also looking back. At Exodus and stuff. We look forward and we look back at Christ has come. Which Christ has come is the greatest guarantee of the future that is to come as well. And so there is a little bit in this, like, consider in this episode. This is the eschatological Christmas note, right? There was waiting to come for Christ to come. Christ came, and now there's waiting for what? What are we waiting for now?
Yeah. What are we waiting for?
Yeah. And that's like, because there are different kinds of ways of thinking about that. I love O Come Emmanuel because O Come Emmanuel isn't like, oh, come Emmanuel, and get us out of here.
Yes.
It's rescue captive Israel who, mourns in lowly exile here, and it talks about be our Prince of Peace. Come, not take us. It's come.
Yeah.
It's come to heal, come to reign, right? And Christ has come, and we are. I think about, like, they were waiting for the kingdom to come. We're waiting for the kingdom to become consummated. We're waiting for the kingdom to invade every square inch, right? In tangible ways. He reigns over it all. We're waiting for the kingdom to, that was initiated to take over.
Yeah. And think about, like, maybe it's helpful to look back a little bit and go, okay, in the first century, right, the early church, what has unfolded since then?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're starting with a very, small group of believers that then is multiplying and growing, but still a minority, right? Vast minority. And they're waiting for the second coming. They're waiting for that second advent, but there's a lot of things happening between their waiting and what's going to happen. And so what has happened? The kingdom of God has been growing and expanding, and enemies have been defeated, right? And that's happening globally. I think I remember you, I think you said this in a sermon a couple months ago, that there are more Christians in the world today than there were people alive in the first century.
Yes, and the Revelation class.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
And I was like, that is a really great thing to ponder. What is happening? Does it look like the kingdom of God is losing?
Yeah.
Does it look like there's this massive retreat and people are just holding their breath and waiting for something to happen? It's like, no, we've got 2,000 years of waiting, but in that waiting, what has happened is the gospel has gone out and churches have been planted, and Christianity is taking over the world.
Yeah. In 200 grandpas, there have been birthed. We have, after that period of time, we have more Christians in the world than there were people in existence. 200 grandpas ago.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So
what's going to happen in 200 more grandpas?
Yeah.
That's.
Should we expect the world to look more Christian or less Christian?
I feel like, based on what we've seen in the past, we should expect more, and yet we may expect also various new kinds of conflict with that Christ, with that message, with that gospel. 1 Corinthians 15
so good
talks about all the enemies being subjected under Christ's feet, right? But when it does so, it talks about how every enemy is going to be subjected under his feet. He says, "For he must reign until he has put all his enemies under his feet."
Yeah.
The last enemy to be destroyed is death, not the first enemy, the last enemy.
Yes.
So when I hear that, so this is what I think about when I think about that. Every So before the last enemy, death, is destroyed, every generation is going to have some new enemy that is going to be put underneath Jesus' feet. So we deal with things today that in the 1900s they didn't have to deal with. And the people in the 1800s didn't have to deal with it. But those people have come, or those particular enemies have been subdued. The problems that were human nature never changes, but there's new flavors of these enemies popping up.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
But like, we're dealing with a particular cultural moment where there are things that I'm like, eventually God's going to put these things under his feet. And it will be, that's history unfolding, is him putting enemies under his feet and the gospel going out and conquering, as Revelation likes to use that term. Yeah. So when you start to think about history that way, you start to, it just becomes I don't know, exciting is the word I like to use. Yeah. Like, you think about, I look at like what's going on now, and a lot of people look at it and go, oh man, everything's going to hell in the handbag. God just got to throw it in the trash bag and then start over, right? Yeah. But if you look at it that way, you'll miss looking at it this way, which is, I wonder how God's going to turn this around. Because there's lots of creative things he can do. And we know that whatever way he's going to do it, it's going to glorify his son through the gospel. So wow, that's exciting. Let's be faithful and pray and work towards that, right? Yeah. Yes. Like, I love that. Like, there are things, we don't live in a world where slavery is as rampant as it once was. Now, slavery is a sad, sad thing. At certain points in our history, it's been a necessary sad thing. In terms of, like, in the first century or earlier, you're like, I don't have a crop. What am I going to do? Well, they got a crop. Well,
I'll go work for him.
I'll go work for you. But back then, it's not like you have anything to give. Yeah. So, I'll become your bondservant. Yeah, for a period of time. And I will benefit from this relationship, right? Because it's way better than I had land and my crop totally died. Yeah. It's way better than me. There's no bankruptcy laws back then. Yeah. It's way better than the alternative, right? And so a lot of people get these relationships. But slavery is always like the result of sin. It's always in terms of like, it's here because sin has wrecked our world, and toil has led to cursing and the soil and stuff like that. So, but even that enemy, this result of sin in the world, over the last 400 years only, has been slowly taken. There's still lots of places in the world right now. There's lots of slavery. Yeah. But if you go look at the map and you put an X on every culture where there was a dominant Christian culture, and then you put an X over everywhere where slavery has been abolished and isn't no longer in common practice, and they're the same X's. Yeah, right. That's the that's, I would say, an example of that. And the impatient would say something like, why didn't that happen right in the first century? It's like, well, we're being faithful and we're waiting and we're praying, and God is doing this through the gospel going out, through all kinds of new things coming from man being faithful to the dominion mandate. It's just like, there's lots that goes into that. Yeah. But so I get excited when I think about the future because I know God owns it.
Yeah. Yeah. The waiting is not without hope.
Yes, right? Exactly.
Where you said this earlier, where we look back. So our Old Testament brothers and sisters would look back to the Exodus and would retell that story, and that's what gave them hope looking forward. Yeah. Right. And I think it's in Titus. It talks about the grace that appeared, and he's talking about something happened in our past, right? Yeah. And that's what gives us a foundation, a strong foundation for hope in the future. Like, why would we believe that Revelation 21 will be realized, where there's no sin and death and sickness, and God is with his people, and it's perfect, and like, what reason do we have to believe that? And the answer is the manger.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Christ was born. And so what are we
Because
doing?
God's faithful to his promises.
Yeah.
And that's the best example of the down payment on a promise you can possibly get. The
Absolutely.
birth of Christ and laid in a manger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're waiting.
Yes.
We're waiting.
We're waiting. That's good.
Yeah.
Well, Merry Christmas again.
Yes.
And again, send your questions on Revelation
Yep.
verses or chapters 1 to 7.
1 to 7.
And we'll do hopefully a special Revelation episode in probably early January, I'm thinking, at this point.
Yeah.
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 Based on where
Let's
we're
get
at.
through Christmas.
Yeah, let's get through Christmas. So, Merry Christmas. Until next time, trust Christ, go to church, and love your neighbor. See you guys.
See ya.